He's Howard Ibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 28 years of experience. Together, Henry and I are the Brief Brothers. We love talking about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. Henry, today we continue our series of speaking with recent graduates of advertising programs. This time it's Elizabeth Gordon, and she's a recent graduate from the Hubbard School of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Minnesota. Let's join the conversation. Okay, Henry, we're back for another episode today. We are excited to invite and have join us another recent graduate from the Hubbard School of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Minnesota, a young woman recommended to us by our friend Mark Jenkins, who has been a co-host
Jensen.
when you, what did I say?
It's Jensen.
Jenkins.
Oh, sorry, Mark Jensen. And Mark has been a substitute co-host when Henry was on the road, so he knows about our show and he's listened to episodes. Elizabeth is not just a recent graduate, I believe May of last year. She is now a full-time employee at Goodby. Now I'm old school, so I'm just accustomed to calling it Goodby. And I noticed when I talked to you before, you like to use the full 4-letter abbreviations. Is that correct?
Yes, I tend to say GS&P. Rich
3 letters.
Silverstein he's a pretty big part of the agency too. But also all the partners, all really have a positive impact in our agency, our culture, what we do, how we service clients. So everyone's
okay.
Mm-hmm.
I stand corrected. But anyway, Elizabeth, welcome to the Brief Brothers. Henry and I are delighted to have you.
Thank you both so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and really excited to talk about advertising, entry-level roles, and all there is to it.
Excellent. Well, let's start off with the way we usually get our conversation started. Henry and I are both really curious to learn more about what was it about advertising that drew you in? How did you find your way to the Hubbard School? Kind of give us a picture of the trajectory that has led to where you are now at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners.
Yes, Goodby, Silverstein and Partners, or you can just say GS&P. It's a mouthful.
GS&P.
So GS&P,
Okay.
GSP.
Well, the reason I'm careful about this is I remember you're in San Francisco, and I know that people who don't live in San Francisco have this tendency to refer to the city on the bay as Frisco, and natives just are annoyed as hell.
Oh, you know the drama. Yes. I was a victim of this too. Frisco, San Fran. Don't say those things here.
Yeah. No, we don't. So it's like, I want to make sure I call your home shop by its correct terms. As someone who aspired to work there, never got a chance, not that I'm expecting a call from Mr. Goodby anytime soon. Still want to get it right. So your story, Elizabeth.
For sure, yes. Well, it was, I didn't start school knowing that I wanted to go into advertising. I actually found my way to the Hubbard School into my junior year, my 3rd year of college, yes, is when I fully started classes there. But when I joined or started university, I had originally wanted to be a lawyer, took political theory, and that kind of changed my mind, was the push I needed to explore something else. And, I was thinking about, yes, and I was thinking about kind of some of the things I was interested in, when I wanted to do as a professional, what was important to me and the legacy I wanted to leave behind. And that's part of what led me to law. I had originally thought it was really the only way that I could make positive change in my community or create things seen by lots of people and that have the impact to impact thoughts and perceptions on a large scale. And I remembered, a conversation or a few conversations maybe I had with my mother when I was a kid about my creativity and my love for art. And she mentioned advertising and this whole world of branding, brand management, all of the different opportunities. And that was really the first seedling of opportunities in this industry, or even this being an option for a career down the line. So then I went to, I was in university figuring out what else I wanted to do, found the Hubbard School, and not all schools have an advertising or strategic communications program. So very fortunate that the U of M, University of Minnesota, did have that. And then I started taking classes. I really dove in full swing head first during my junior year, spring semester. I was taking all ad and PR classes.
Wow.
Took classes from Mark, joined a few different organizations at the Hubbard School, like the National Student Advertising Competition, just to learn more about this industry that I really didn't know that much about and that I was about to dedicate my all to and really pursue a career in. And something I did think about was, that need and that really desire for me to have a legacy personally and professionally that is giving back and supporting my community and advocating for the things I believe in. And sometimes you don't really make the connection that, advertising or marketing and selling stuff has a channel or potential ways for you to create those opportunities or do that work of supporting communities and advocating for what you believe in and advancing equity. But advertising is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, literally, especially now. And even as we just progress in time, like with what we have online and with our phones, it's everywhere. And these messages are seen by the masses. They're seen by millions of people, and a lot of them have the impact to positively, influence how people see different groups of people, different identities, different experiences in our society. So advertising, there are plenty of opportunities to do fun things and create work that's creatively exciting, but also to do creative work and to build relationships with clients that have a focus on doing things that are also positive and helpful for our world and our community.
So tell us, what is your role? Are I know the answer to this question because we talked about it, but the viewer might be wondering, well, is she a creative? Is she a strategist? What is your role?
I talked a lot about creative work and everything, yes, because that's our bread and butter. It's what we're all, what everyone in the agency or behind the scenes is working to perfect and make great. But I'm an assistant account manager. Just one of the many departments at an agency. We have creative, we have media, communication strategy, and then account people, of course. And what I do is really acting as a client partner, kind of overseeing the whole scope of a project from start to finish, overseeing the teams that are working on the project, making sure that everybody has the information and resources they need to play their part, planting those seeds with our team, of maybe going further above and beyond to address the client problem, or exploring different channels or avenues that maybe could satisfy that hard line or the business ask, but also branch out into exciting territory or do things that are more fun. So it's really exciting because I get to work with all different teams at the agency. I get to work with everybody. I get to see the project from start to finish, all of the behind the scenes work too, which might sound boring, but I mean, the advertisements, there's shipping and trafficking and budgeting and billing, and it all plays a part in creating something, in creating that campaign, or even if it's just a spot that is out into the world and seen by millions. So
Henry, correct me if I'm wrong. We've talked with creatives, we've talked with strategists, we've talked with CMOs, we've talked with lots of people. I don't recall if we've ever actually had a conversation with someone who was an account on the account side, account manager, account director. Can you recall?
I think, didn't we have, we've had a couple of clients that had been on the agency side, I believe on the account side. So,
But they had evolved into other roles,
yeah.
which is another reason. Now Elizabeth falls in this category of a series we've been doing where we interview young professionals, either very recent graduates or fairly recent graduates from an advertising program. We've done this now with a couple of recent graduates from the Hubbard School. We've also done it with some of Mark Lewis's School of Communication Arts students in London. And if I'm not mistaken, now that Elizabeth is joining us, the Americans have taken the lead in terms of representatives on
Who's
our
keeping
show.
score?
I am. I am. It's like, it's like I wasn't into baseball, but this is my way of saying I have some interest in statistics. But this, I know, it's weird, but I don't recall it. We've talked to creatives. All the students we've talked to have been creatives, and now here we have Elizabeth, who has clearly a passion for the industry, but also other things for her community, and she chose the account side, which intrigues me, fascinates me. And I'm going to guess, just because you're still doing it, that you're finding fulfillment as an account manager. Is that true?
absolutely. And I think Goodby is a big part of that. It's a special place to be at. You know, I've been able to work on some really cool projects, some really big projects that, even if, you know, as an entry level account person, I was an account coordinator up until recently, and I'm now an assistant account manager, both entry level roles. You think maybe you don't have an opportunity to make a huge impact or to really, you know, play a huge part in the development of a campaign or be on the team, but they've really created opportunities for that. And I found it fulfilling, even if I'm not at the stage where I'm really the first person a client would contact, or really, you know, their right-hand man in terms of partnership.
Right,
I'm
right
still
hand what?
developing those relationships, right-hand gal, of course.
Right hand woman. Yes, come on,
Yeah.
come on.
But even though I'm not at that level yet, I still have an opportunity and have been developing those relationships. People really have made it clear that they want to hear voices from everybody in their room. They want to hear perspectives from everybody, and I feel valued and understood. And it's also a great place where I can grow into those positions where I have more of a direct relationship with clients.
It
So it's definitely been fulfilling.
it should be said too, I think that working on the account side at a very creative oriented agency like a Good B Silverstein is different, let's say, than working on the account side at run of the mill agency. Um, because I think the role is different. When you're working on account side in a Wyden and Kennedy at a Good B Silverstein at a shop like that, part of your role is also to really help the creative sell in that high level creativity. I know, you know, there's different personality types for agencies, and there's some really strong kind of agencies on the marketing side, on the client relations side, but they don't necessarily going to push anybody to do outstanding creative. So I think the culture of the agency is going to dictate a lot what someone's experience is going to be like in any department. But I think it really changes in the account department because it is an agency oriented toward creativity.
Yeah, I agree. So
Absolutely.
let's back up just a minute. You said you found advertising and PR in some of those classes at Hubbard by your junior year. So you had explored other things, political theory. You were thinking about becoming a lawyer. Thank goodness we have too many of those. And I know 6 or 7 of them in my family alone. So how many classes into the coursework at Hubbard did it take before you realized, oh, this makes sense for me. This is where I really want to go? Was there a
Oh,
particular class? Was there an instructor? Was it a project, a combination of all those things? Tell us about that.
it's definitely a combination of all those things. I did throw, you know, I did just dive full swing into these classes. I remember my junior year spring semester, I didn't take anything but J school classes, which I'm grateful for because I really had that strong kind of onboarding to the program and the industry. But it was certainly a combination of classes, people at the J school, additional programs like National Student Advertising Competition, and professors. One, you know, actually, Mark Jensen. I mean, oh, he's been a really big mentor for me, truthfully, throughout my student years and my professional development. I remember one day he just like was he loves to have he has great presentations in his classes where he shares opportunities and internships. And you know, one day he just said, yeah, we have this thing called NSAC, and you guys should join. And I've always been someone who likes to be involved and just learn new things. And I went to the first meeting, and then
What is
wow, it
spell it?
became,
What is that out? NSAC?
yes, National Student Advertising Competition, or
Okay.
NSAC.
Okay.
We call it NSAC. But
Inside baseball. I'm not the only one here. Come on, Henry.
absolutely, yes. But no, it ended up becoming a really big part of my student experience, in my advertising education and development as a young professional. Um, Classes as well. I remember taking account planning and creative writing for advertising development and just loving those classes. Even though I kind of knew I didn't think I wanted to be a creative. I originally joined and kind of thought, oh, like I'm a creative person, this would be great. But then after really learning about the ins and outs of the industry, the various opportunities and things that you can do, and also just considering my own personal relationship with art and how it's something I like to do for myself in my free time, I realized that my skills and perspective would be more valuable in other roles in the industry. So those two classes were great. Mark Jensen also he shares a lot of opportunities with his students. And one of those opportunities, the American Advertising Federation Most Promising Multicultural Students Program, is where I met recruiters at GS&P and actually started interviewing for entry-level roles. And you could say it's why I have this job. I mean, it's where I really started those conversations. So really, it's been a collection of support from other people and honestly interacting with different people in the J School, my NSAC colleagues and peers, my presentation team. It's really the people, truthfully, I think, for me, that have created an experience and helped me fall in love and see the opportunities for me to make a positive impact in this industry while also doing work that I like. So.
Well, networking, we all know networking is so vitally important, especially in our industry, but I don't think it's not, I think that's true in any industry. But there are certainly many outlets, and Minneapolis, for those of our viewers who don't know it, is one of the biggest advertising markets in the nation. I was surprised when I lived there for 8 or 9 years, and I'm familiar with the campus. I was surprised to learn that in terms of the number of major brands and the institutions, the infrastructures, and Minneapolis makes Minneapolis the number 6th market in the country for advertising, bigger than LA. Not population, but because the major brands are located there, institution like the University of Minnesota and others, and like I said, the infrastructure lend itself to a place way up there in the North Tundra, as we like to say, has become a mecca for major advertising talent. Major advertising agency shops,
Yeah.
our agencies have located there. Not branch offices, but founding agencies are there, and we've talked to a number of people there. So you had an opportunity to really connect with some powerful voices and influencers there. What was the process of you finding the internship at GSP? Was it
Yes.
through the American Advertising Federation, that program that you're telling us about?
Yes. Well, actually, I started at GS&P full time last September. So I started as an account coordinator in September of 2023. And before that, I did have an internship, not at a creative agency. It was at a media agency. It was at Omnicom Media Group in New York City. And that was also through another program I was introduced to by Mark Jensen, the International Radio and Television Society fellowship. He was a fellow years ago as well. But meeting GS&P and being introduced to this opportunity it's actually twofold now that I'm thinking about it, which is really, really interesting and just another testament to how these programs and additional professional development opportunities outside of your classes are really important for this industry. But at the NSAC National Student Advertising Competition, as I mentioned, finals in 2022, our team went to the final competition for the first time in like 11 years. And the presentation team, had the opportunity to present there. It was a huge part of my professional development and public speaking, but there were also recruiters at that program at that competition. And GS&P was one of the agencies recruiting and presenting at the kind of recruitment portion of the conference for students. And I connected with the director of talent and one of the junior talent acquisition specialists, both of which who I still am friends with today and talk to regularly. And kind of just, I was a junior, so I wasn't looking for full-time opportunities, and I already had plans for that summer. But, just networking and kind of learning about the opportunities and the different agencies in the industry and the kind of work that they do. And I stayed connected with those people through LinkedIn. And then another opportunity I mentioned earlier, the American Advertising Federation Most Promising Multicultural Students Program, again, introduced to me in my classes with Mark Jensen. I applied and was accepted. And in February of 2023, so almost nearly a year after I had first met, or actually almost 2 years after I had first met those recruiters at GS&P, I went to that program, and they were there again, and it was really kind of like a hi, like we instantly recognized each other. It was like a hello, just kind of a fun, friendly conversation. And part of that program is a recruitment fair and an interview opportunity for some students. And I interviewed with GS&P. At the time, it was February of my senior year. I wasn't looking for full time yet. I had to finish my coursework, but we stayed in touch. I took my IRTS fellowship internship opportunity in New York because I hadn't yet identified any full time opportunities, and also wanted to participate in the fellowship because of the professional development. And then in July, GS&P called me and I interviewed for the Doritos account and the Mountain Dew account and joined the Mountain Dew team as an account coordinator. So it was through those two programs that I met recruiters and, maintained that connection. And we were able to see each other again and recognize each other. And I think that really played a big part in the opportunity that I had to work there, but also just having a fun and like friendly connection with those two people, even if I didn't get to work there, that was really valuable to me. And I enjoyed talking to them. And also have had that experience with other recruiters from the MPMS program. I may not have explored or accepted offers with them, but I still have relationships with them. And that's a really important part of this industry and finding success in this industry.
Yeah, Henry, she's going to be the CEO here one of these days. I can just feel it. It's just the vibe.
Oh my.
I'm really curious, Elizabeth, when you were talking to your classmates, the people that you were studying with. Classmates sounds demeaning in a way because it's like you're not you weren't a freshman when you were entering the program. You were
My peers, yeah.
You were a peer. There we go. Thank you. You're a peer. I'm just a writer. What do I know? Your peers in your classroom. What can you give us a sense of what their impression of? Obviously, they were committed to the program too because that's why they were there. But what were they saying? What kind of comments were you exchanging with each other about advertising as a career? Clearly, they were bought into it, but I want to. Can you kind of give us some feedback on what they're thinking, what your peers are thinking?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, people are excited to work in the industry. I think my generation too, we all have, people kind of know how Gen Z views work and the different maybe approach that we have to careers and working than other generations do. I think me and a lot of my peers and classmates share a lot of those feelings and values, but it doesn't make us any less committed to our careers and making a positive impact and legacy professionally, as a stereotype would say. But there are some of those questions, those common questions about what am I really doing? What's the impact? I think my generation has a unique kind of question, something that other generations haven't thought about when thinking about advertising or careers in advertising, but really understanding, how this impacts our society other than just selling things. The other kind of ways that brands play a part in our ecosystem, and the different institutions that we have in our societies, and the way that people live their lives and experience things. And those questions, I don't think maybe were as valuable or not valuable, but maybe not asked as much before in the past, or maybe they weren't really thought of at such a scale that they are now amongst my generation. So you hear people talk about being concerned about just going into an industry and just selling things, or working for brands that aren't exciting, or doing work that has a positive impact in our society, or is even just maybe not positive impact necessarily in terms of pushing certain experiences or advocating for equity, but doing work that is also innovative and cool and inspiring to people. There's a lot of conversations about not wanting to do that and not wanting to work for brands that aren't involved in contributing to society in any way, whether it's by fostering innovation and different thoughts, or actually supporting communities and advancing some of these social issues. But I think a lot more thought has gone into the role that brands are playing in our society, and how, as future advertising professionals, we can impact that positively, or how we can also just, continue to maybe perpetuate narratives that aren't so positive and that we want to change. So I love how, when thinking about advertising in careers in this industry, my generation has really come with a lens of wanting to produce change and wanting to impact things in a positive way, to adjust those status quos maybe that aren't so positive, or helping, or doing things that are impactful for our world and our community. But
Well,
I've appreciated that.
I'm old school when it comes to a lot of this stuff, and that means and this is my personal opinion, I think a lot of brands are getting involved in issues that they probably shouldn't be getting involved in, because we're living in a highly polarized society these days, and most brands are parts of publicly held corporations, and we're supposed to be trying to return value to those shareholders, and taking sides on a 50-50 battlefield, to me, seems pretty short-sighted if you're making donuts or breakfast cereal or sneakers
Beer, even beer.
or beer, to be, you know, basically saying, I'm willing to write off 50% of the potential audience, or maybe more, by taking a stance that has nothing to do with my product. And I also am old school in the sense that, and I'm not, I'm not going to antagonize, and I recognize that your opinion is one that's held by a lot of young people. But I see value in in what we call the market economy, in producing a better widget than the next guy. In our system of economics, everything is based on cooperation and free will. So I buy the brand that I want to buy. Nobody forces me to buy it. Nobody forces me to work at the employer that I work at. And so we're it all everybody cooperates without having to be told to cooperate. And I'm very fond of a piece that was written by a creative director upon his anniversary in advertising. I think it was like his 30th anniversary in advertising, and it was basically a pitch to younger advertising people not to allow others to demean our profession, saying that it doesn't add value. And he gave an anecdote about how he went to a Nestle ice cream plant in Argentina, where he's from, and he was with a group of people from the agency, and the head of the plant came into the room where they were and said, who's going to be responsible for the creative? And he raised his hand, meekly, and the guy took him into the room where they were like actually making the ice cream, and he says, all these people here work on the day shift, making this ice cream, and if you make a good campaign, there'll be a second shift here. We'll be able to hire more people. There'll be a second shift here. And if you make an outstanding campaign, we'll have shifts running around the clock, and we'll be able to employ twice as many, 3 times as many people as we employ right now. And sure enough, they came up with a killer campaign, and according to his telling, that plan ended up working 3 shifts around the clock. So I think there is an inherent honor to helping sell something our fellow man has made to other fellow human beings, all on a kind of this voluntary basis. So maybe that's quaint, and I know that I'm a dinosaur, but that's
No,
the way that I look at it.
Henry has told this story many times, and I will never stop him from retelling it because it's a great story.
Completely
And
agree.
what I see in you, Elizabeth, and tell me if I'm wrong, we've had much older guests on our show talk about others of our age group who are far more focused on, they're far less focused and far less committed to selling things than they are to the cause du jour, the cause that they care about. And I say more power to them if they have a deep-seated belief, a heartfelt belief in these causes. But those opportunities, which tend to be pro bono in agencies, are few and far between. and they don't bring in any bucks. They might bring in awards. They might bring in fake awards, but they don't bring in bottom dollar revenue. And what I'm seeing in you, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're walking a very fine tightrope here. You started off on your career working on Doritos and Mountain Dew, and I kind of teased you when we had our pre-recording call. Said, okay, how the heck do you make a change in your community working on those kinds of accounts? Are you comfortable selling Doritos and Mountain Dew? And you gave me and I want to, you can talk further about that. You got to do that. You got to be able to, you got to have the fundamentals, the fundamental skills, not just in creative, but in managing the client as you do in your role to sell those products. Just like Henry's story about the ice cream. If you don't sell the ice cream, there's no revenue for the agency, there's no revenue for the ice cream company, and everyone goes home and they're unemployed. We contribute to the multi-billion-dollar industry called advertising that puts food on our tables and sends kids to schools and helps us buy houses and buy cars and education and all these things. And yet you also have passion for the things that matter most to you, and you're finding fulfillment in that. I think you're walking a tightrope, and you seem to be doing it well with poise and patience, something that your generation doesn't get credit for. And something that I think oldsters in our generation is like, they don't want to be bothered by the selling of the widgets. They want to just dive in and you pick the cause, left, right, doesn't matter. They just want to do their cause because they want to change the world that way. One of the guests we hope to have on in next month is Steve Harrison. He's written a couple of books, but he and Dave Dye got together and wrote a new book called The Howard Gossage Show. And Steve Harrison wrote a book about 10 years ago. And I have to call it up because I was talking to Henry about it just before we started recording. Let me back up here and get it right. It's called Changing the World is the Only Fit Work for a Grown Man. I would amend that to say a grown person. But it's the story of Howard Gossage, who was in the 60s, had a huge impact on advertising in the same way that a guy like David Ogilvy and Bill Bernbach did. And now they have this new book out called The Howard Gossage Show, where they're really reviving or restoring, bringing him back to his rightful place. And I think he's doing what you're trying to do. So how do you walk this fine line? How do you care about certain things for your community, believe that you're going to make some change while you're selling products like Doritos and Mountain Dew? And that's no slam against those products.
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to say, Henry, I think that's a great story, and I might have to steal it because I think it really is valuable when we talked about my generation and young people and their thoughts on the industry. It's not an industry that's going anywhere anytime soon. It's one that's continuously growing. As more brands emerge and more opportunities for that are available in our society. And I think that, understanding as well brands, even, brands in our ecosystem, but brands you work on to the authority they have to advocate for certain causes or maybe latch on to them, because not every brand does have the authority. And that is another fine line that you need to be aware of. You can't expect every brand to advocate for certain social issues or to, maybe like create positive change in our society, the way that oftentimes people envision, but they create things that are seen by millions of people and products that are used by millions of people, and even just impacting the way that those messages are delivered or the different kinds of experiences and identities and people that are present in those messages has an opportunity to have a positive impact. So I think it's very important to consider the role of your brand and its authority it has to maybe be in some of these spaces. But even if it maybe doesn't have that authority, if it's not pro bono work like you were speaking of, Howard, some of those opportunities with nonprofits or other organizations that are only and directly focused on those causes, there are multiple opportunities to do things for that brand, or to create and cultivate a campaign that can still have a positive impact in society in different ways. So one of the things that I think about is I work on Lunchables now. In our campaign, one of our What's Your Lunchable campaigns that was produced last year and is currently on the air. the main character, the main family in it is a family of color. And I think just there have been multiple other campaigns from our agency where there have been, the Mountain Dew campaign. Also, for example, we had a scene in that Super Bowl ad, the Baja Blast ad, where there were mad scientists. There were scientists working in a lab, doing what was supposed to be perceived as very important lab work. And we had two Black scientists cast for that role. And that's something that isn't maybe commonly seen. Certain people in certain roles and professions and experiences in life. So just because maybe the brand that you're working for doesn't have the specific authority to directly speak on certain issues or advocate for them doesn't mean that there isn't opportunities to do positive things with the work they're putting out in the world.
Well said. Well said.
Well,
So,
I definitely agree with that. And
Mhm.
so I work at a multicultural agency. We were founded 50 years ago by a woman, a high school graduate, at a time when there weren't a ton of ad agency founders that were women. And she decided to make the focus of her agency the booming Latino market in the U.S. And the agency's mantra for many years has been dedicated to erasing stereotypes. So the way we portray our audience, the way we portray consumers, certainly should be uplifting, we believe, and shouldn't engage in destructive stereotypes and so forth. But I get nervous because I feel that some advertisers and some agencies have lost the plot, and they've lost, frankly, touch with a big portion of the country that doesn't necessarily live on the coasts, isn't necessarily uh you know attending the highest level academic institutions, um, have a different set of values, et cetera. And honestly, I just think that's dangerous for marketers whose success depends on being as popular as possible across the board. But I definitely agree with the sentiment in terms of, you know, um, uh, building up uh, 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 the consumer, and really um, advocating on behalf of consumers, and reflecting a world as we'd want it to be, but within kind of some common sense boundaries, is what I would say.
well, this is where I think Howard Gossage is still powerful and relevant today, because he said back in the 60s, um, there's nothing better to aim for than changing the world. And through advertising, he believed we could do that. So that was a sentiment that he expressed, what, 60 years ago, 50, 60 years. I was an English major. My numbers aren't my top game. So however long ago that was, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's so laudable that Steve Harrison and Dave Dye, both of whom have been on our show before and are coming back, have brought out this new book. I'm still waiting for Amazon to deliver. They're going to supposedly deliver it to me in a couple of days. I can't wait to dive into it. It's the Howard Gossage Show. And according to the reviews I've read, Dave Dye dove into all these back issues of, was it the New Yorker magazine, to acquire ads we haven't seen, print ads we haven't seen in decades, to showcase them in this book. So I'm just eager to see these examples of old school print ads. Henry, you and I haven't done a creative review in a while. This might be an
Yeah.
opportunity. But so Elizabeth, pivoting here from that, you've got yourself an audio, a platform here. All 17 of our viewers are eager to hear from you. What would you say? What would you say to others your age who are maybe thinking about advertising, or they're as committed as you are? They think they're as committed as you are to doing something for a cause they believe in. It doesn't matter what that cause is. They have a passion to do something, but they're not thinking about advertising the way you weren't thinking about advertising when you were a sophomore, a freshman, or a sophomore. what would you say to them?
I think that something that people don't realize is that advertising is, I mentioned the ubiquity of it in our society. Because of that, you know, it really, it's similar to other media in the terms of the way that it impacts, you know, different things, different ways that we understand our society, how we see different groups of people, different experiences, different identities, people from different parts of the world. A lot of people are socialized. One of the main things that people are socialized by is media when they develop understandings of people or things they haven't experienced. And advertising is in the same boat as traditional media when you think of movies and songs and those things that really have huge scale and impact culturally for people. Advertising's in the same boat as that. So when you think about the messages that are being produced through these things, through advertising for different brands, I think it's important to consider the scale of that and realize how much you can do with that in the different areas of the industry, whether it's creative or account, you know, acting as a client partner or media, understanding the different channels that these messages will be sent on. It's also not going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, it's only growing and becoming a bigger part of our society and the institutions that we interact with. So why wouldn't you want to be a part of that and have the opportunity to have a positive impact on that and to, you know, do cool things with that and to help produce messages that are innovative and promote growth in different areas of our society and our cultural discourse for people, you know, and are cool and fun. So I just think it has the opportunity, this industry, to for so many people with so many different kinds of skills and personalities to have a positive impact. It's really not just, you know, for certain people who think a certain way or people who have a certain skill set. You know, there is so much opportunity here, and it's such a big institution in our society to interact with. So have a positive impact on it. Come be a part of it. And I also think that, especially for creative people, there's an opportunity even outside of creative roles to really satisfy that need that you have to create and do things that inspire our society. Join us.
Well, wonderful.
That's what I have to say.
Wonderful. Henry, any closing question or thoughts? No,
No, just a thank you.
yeah, Elizabeth Gordon, account manager, soon to be account director, soon to be CEO, who knows what, either at Goodby or some other legacy shop. You're on your way. Thank you so much for joining Henry and me on the Brief Brothers. We loved having you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so very much.
Good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Ibach. And together, we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time. Bye-bye.